All right, thank you for joining us. Zach Twardowski here with Wiley Hawkins and Brian Allen. There we go. 2 rounds of applause. So, Wiley, how long have you been with FFL Total now?
Next month, I'll hit my 2-year mark.
2 years.
Yep.
Got it. And you started when we were like helping like 30 families a month total, right? It was like you, me, and Easton, and that was it.
That was it.
And then, Brian, you've been here coming up on a year soon?
Yeah, next month will be a year.
Next month will be a year. Awesome. And you've been helping 40 families a month since you started, basically, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
Which is much better than – you guys are actually both much better than when I started. I think you helped – your best month was your first month, right?
Well, now this month's my best, but my 3rd biggest month ever was my 2nd month where I helped 47 families.
47 families. And you helped 30 your first month, I think, right?
No, first month was 25. Second month was 48.
Cool. And then for everyone else watching who's like, wow, that's a lot. I helped 11 my first month, and then 15 my second month, and then 12 my 3rd month. So if you're not good yet, it's okay. I'll be here to help everyone out that's not good, and they can talk to people how to have a fast start, because I didn't. So, Brian, why don't you give a little background, though? So you went to CSU.
Yep.
Casey went to CSU, who's helping us with recording, and Wiley went to CSU for a little bit and then didn't graduate.
Yep.
And I went to CU, so I'm heavily outnumbered in this room.
Good.
For anyone from Colorado, that's a rivalry, kind of. I mean, we dominate the rivalry, so it's not really a rivalry, but it's supposedly a rivalry. So after you graduated from CSU in, 2016?
Yeah, 2016.
Okay, what did you do after that before you found FFL?
So right after I graduated, I did seasonal wine work where I would go work at a winery for the harvest season. Somebody else brought the grapes in. We'd crush them, do all the wine chemistry, put it in barrels. And then those are all like contract labor jobs. So you'd work your tail off 3-4 months at a time. You don't even have time to spend the money you're making, make a bunch of overtime, then follow the season down south and do it again.
Got it. And then do you remember when we did the podcast with Andrew and we talked about, you're like, Andrew's like, what's the best kind of wine you could get? And what was the one you said?
I told him if he was going to Napa to get a Screaming Eagle.
Yeah. And then do you remember like a week later, Wiley posted a picture in Slack and was like, a client gave me this?
Yes.
That was
really weird. And you were like, dude, you should go get that appraised.
Yeah.
And see what it's worth. And then Wiley was like, what does that mean?
Well, the bottle of wine was worth more than the commission that I made on that sale.
Yeah, that was crazy. But it was just a weird coincidence because it was like a week later.
Yeah.
And I was telling Andrew about it, and he was like, that doesn't even make sense, like how that happened.
It's crazy.
So it was really crazy. Okay, and then so you got done you traveled around.
Yeah.
What was your travel like that couple years?
So my first vintage was up like outside of Portland, Oregon. Super cool. That was kind of a bigger winery. Then I worked in New Zealand, which I had a smaller winery, but kind of more of an educational type thing. So you would work, August to November up here, February, March, April, May in New Zealand or Australia or something. Then I went to Sonoma at like not quite as fancy as Screaming Eagle, but at a very, reputable boutique winery, craft wines, all that kind of stuff. And then I went down to Australia spring of 2018 and did another gigantic, like super industrial crush, like yellowtail and all the stuff you'd see at the supermarket.
Got it. And then how did you get from there? Because what was your job after that before FFL?
After that, it sounds really cool and it was fun, but I got to travel a lot, but I did get a little burnt out. I lived out of a 45-liter backpack for like 2 years in hostels and stuff. And
how big is that? Bigger than like this backpack? Like how big is a 45-liter backpack? Like
maybe 1/3 bigger than that one.
Are you serious?
Wow.
Yeah. For 2 years?
Because you get a 45-liter because it's a carry-on. You start getting big.
Okay,
yeah,
got it.
There you go.
Got it.
You get a carry on to live in for the rest of.
Yeah. It made me really good at budgeting my money, by the way, but it was like also for buying things. I was like, if I want to get something new, I have to get rid of something.
So what did you pack there knowing I'm going to need this for a year?
2 work pants, 2 work shirts, and then basically socks and underwear and toilet brush, toothpaste, GoPro. That's it.
Got to have the GoPro, right? Got to be able to document. Do you have any videos and stuff from there?
Oh, yeah. I got tons of scuba diving videos. I mean, it was cool. Like, in between, I did a bunch of cool stuff, like drove up the coast with a bunch of Italian guys or, drove down the coast with some people from France and stuff from Napa to, like, L.A. So I did a bunch of cool stuff. But after that, I came back to Denver, And I initially wanted to work in the cannabis industry. That was short-lived, no money, not fun. And then I had a lot of friends in sales, so I kind of broke into sales, doing face-to-face sales of travel trips where your parents or you and your wife attend a timeshare presentation. I did that for like 2 years.
Got it. And then you started doing this last year. I guess, so we'll dive into have a really fast start doing this, but do you think for other people out there that have sales jobs right now, like, was it beneficial having that background starting this? And then like, what is working in our sales world like compared to other sales worlds? Because I've never done anything else sales wise.
Never done anything else.
Nope.
I would say the training at my previous company for the travel packages was, we trained on, a lot of nonverbal cues, body language. We built a lot of impulse. We would build value. And quite frankly, the objections are the same as I've seen. It's always the same 5 things. Think about it, talk to someone, no money, no time, don't want to deal with it. So even though it was a different product and everything, the objections are the same basically, and I had tons of training on that. They had it down to a science. And then also, I got to move into a management position there, so I already started to like build a team there before I left, which has helped over here too.
Do you think if you're rating like difficulty in sales, which one was harder to, like, if you have 10 appointments for this or 10 people you talk to for the other one, which one do you have more headway with?
Oh, that one was way harder.
Got it.
Because leads. I came over here for leads. I came over here for a lot of reasons, but I was sick of having to, so someone would be walking by and I'd like get their attention and then get them to come talk to me at a booth. That was the hardest part. We called it the engagement. So to engage people was the hardest thing. Cold, straight out of nowhere. Someone walking by, get them to talk to you for 15 minutes, sell them something for $100 to $300.
Got it.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned leads. I remember when Wiley started, you came into the office that we had an old office that was like, it was literally a jail cell. Did you know that, Brian? It was an old police station in Parker, Colorado.
I heard there was 3 rooms, but only 2 of them had windows. That's what
only 2 of them had window. There might have been 4 rooms, I think. And
There was 4, but one was like a janitor's closet.
one was a janitor's closet, and Clint worked out of that one.
Yep, with no windows. God bless him.
And he got distracted when he was getting started dialing, so we just would lock him in that room and make him dial.
He did really good.
Yeah.
After that.
But the section of the office we had was the old holding cells for when they arrest someone. So we literally used to work out of a jail, which our office is much nicer than that now.
Yeah.
I remember like when Sean tells stories about the corporate office and how it used to be like real small. I'm like, ours was literally a jail in the beginning. So, and it kind of felt like it sometimes it was so small.
It really did.
And the walls were so thin, you could hear everyone, no matter what room you were in.
And you felt trapped in there until you got your 15 appointments.
Exactly. And we stayed in there till we had a 15 point. But I remember you came in the first time. Talk about your first day that you came in.
I can sort of compare it to, so I was working in the industry probably a month prior, and then it wasn't for me. I really hated the life insurance industry. And then for about a month or 2, didn't know what I was going to do with myself, sort of just debating if I wanted to go in car sales or what I was going to do. And then long story short, got introduced to Zach, and then I came into the office for the very first day. And at my old company, we didn't have leads. So I walk in, and I was just expected Zach to just like give me like pretty much just like a stack of, people to cold call essentially. So I walk in, I'm like, hey, nice to meet you. He's like, where's your leads, bro? And I'm like, what? I'm like, what's a lead? And he's like, you're kidding. And then he's like, you didn't buy any leads. I was like, no, I have no idea what that is. And he's like, all right, dude, take this. He like prints off like 25, game time final expense leads. He's like, take this. He's like, just say their name, say you're with the benefit office for final expense, and then say what 4 or 6 work better for me to get the options out to. And
that was our phone script training.
Yes.
And I think it still should be because it worked.
So I got there at like 9 o'clock, and I dialed till about 11, and I set 12 appointments. At my old company, I would dial for 12 hours, and I would set 4.
Mm-hmm.
And when I came over here, I was like, wow, there's such a big disparity between like, obviously if you have leads and you don't have leads, there's such a big difference in terms of like how much time, consumption that you don't have to deal with. So that was like the biggest thing that I learned for myself was like, dude, having leads is truly a blessing.
Yeah. And I remember too, you came in and like people were like, who do you buy leads for? Who do you not? I remember you drove in and you were like, hey, I don't really have any money left. I'm like, what does that mean? You're like, I got like 36 cents in my bank account. Hopefully you don't care if I share because I already shared it.
No, you're good.
But I was like, well, and you lived in Fort Collins. So anyone not familiar with Colorado, he lived in Fort Collins. We were in Parker. So it's like an hour and a half drive.
Yeah.
So he drove all the way down there. I'm like, well, he's either crazy or he's going to be really good or really driven, and it was a little bit of all, come to find out. But I was like, well, if he's crazy enough to drive down an hour and a half to not even have enough gas money to get home, I guess I can get him some leads because he's going to work them, right? And he has to work them. So like for people that are like, who do I buy leads for? People that are willing to do crazy stuff that, stand out from everyone else, right? Yeah, so I remember that. And then, so Brian, you had no insurance experience. So what was your thoughts on leads? Because you asked a lot of questions about leads. So for anyone that's new, like what kind of questions were you asking to figure out if you wanted to make this shift or not?
I wanted to know what really was on them, which, all the leads we have either have like a birthday address. Some of them even have the loan amount or the coverage amount they're looking for. A lot of the internet ones even have like types of beneficiaries and maybe even the coverage they want. And what I found doing the cold thing at my old job, walking past people, is I had to have like a whole 7-minute conversation, even though it was about vacations, but same thing with them to like extract that information from them. And then as soon as I had it, it was a lot easier. Whereas I was like, I wanted a buyer-initiated process. Not a seller-initiated process. So I would so much rather sit down with people looking for help or, call people that want something than try to straight up basically hustle somebody for a vacation that they probably don't need.
Right. I remember when we were talking too, you were looking at another insurance company and you were like, well, they go door knock all their leads because they say it's better. And we had a conversation about that. I'm like, well, wouldn't it make more sense for you to actually have appointments that you're going to rather than... And I remember you thought that was kind of weird at first. You're like, I should just go door knock them all, right? So what changed your perspective on that and actually being willing to dial and have appointments instead of just going and door knocking every single lead?
Well, one I did with the practice company. I did like one little ride along, and that's all they do. They throw them in a route, and they go and door knock all the final expense leads. And one, I was looking at him in his car, and I was like, they have their phone numbers on them. And I actually asked him, I was like, why don't you just call them? And he goes, it's just kind of how we do it. And I was like, well, if they knew you were coming over, And two, I think it goes back to compressing time. I'd rather have someone knowing that I'm coming over this afternoon and be prepared for it than odds, try and catch them when they're home or not. You know what I mean?
Yeah. My biggest thing was when I got started in regards to leads was Zach asked me, he's like, how much do you want to make? How many families do you want to help? And I was like, I want to help 40 families a month. And then so we just backtracked that goal. He's like, so in order to help 40 families a month, you just need to help 10 families a week. And I'm like, okay, so that's 2 families or 3 families a day. How many leads do you need to help 3 families? How many appointments? And I was like, I'm going to need 8, right? So he's like, if you need 8 appointments on your 2 run days, then you're going to need to spend about $900 to $1,100 in leads. And that will get you 50 leads or 100 leads, whatever it is, depending on the lead type. And so that's how I first started I was like, I want to help 40 families this month. And then we'd just backtrack week by week. And then we'd just go, okay, now you spend this much on leads. And then you need to dial, for this long to get this many appointments.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people set all their expectations with the end result they're trying to get, whether it's like, I want to hit Hall of Fame or I want to, like you said, help 40 families a month, and they leave it there. But you have to backtrack those goals more, because if you go, I want to help 400 families for a year, that's a pretty astronomical number if you're just looking at it, right? You're like, that's a lot of families. Or I want to get my agency to help 1,000 families a month. That seems like a lot. But you start breaking it down for the Hall of Fame one, it's like, okay, that's only, 4 days a week in the field, 2 families per day. Like anyone could do that, right? Yeah. And not anyone could do it, but like if you're willing to go out in the field and and work and dial, like it's a lot more attainable number than going, how do I do 400? Like I can't do that today. And same thing with getting your agency to 1,000 families a month. It's like, okay, that's 100 writers helping 10 families a month, or that's 50 writers helping 20 families a month. How many, or, if you have some doing 40, 50, it becomes less and less. Like I remember you were here when we helped 1,000 families in a month. The first time we had like 80 writers do it.
It's crazy. Because
everyone was helping 50 to 60 families a month. At least the top 10 were. Yeah. So it made the numbers a lot more attainable, right? But you start breaking it down to that, and it's like, okay, I just have to take a lot of people and teach them how to be a new agent, go to how to help 10 families a month, how to help 15, 20, 30, right? So I guess, Brian, for you to have the start you had, what are a couple of things that you would be like, if you could, like, the games where you can create a player, like in Madden or something, you can create like a super player. Yeah. If you were creating an agent, like what are some things that you would have them do to have success right off the bat?
Plug into the trainings. That was a big thing. I had a nice meeting with you before I started, but It does take
The meeting, by the way, was like a couple different meetings that were like 3 hours each that consisted of a lot of questions.
I did chew your
which is
ear off
cool.
multiple
And I
times.
answered him because I was like, are you actually going to work or not, though?
I also told you on the second one that I was going to do it, and you said call me and give me your decision. I was like, dude, I'm going to do it. And then I called you that night. But anyway.
Cool. Just so everyone knows, it was a lot of questions, which was fine. And I was happy to answer as soon as I knew that he was going to, so.
But plugging in, so a big thing that I took from one of those is, yeah, it's easy training. We have the best training. It's free training. But no one's really going to make you go do it. And it is all on YouTube, Spotify, whatever it is. And you just find the channel. And then I started just letting those things run. So I've listened to every USA podcast, every Tri-State podcast. I think I've listened to all the Dave Witchard's podcasts. So I just let them run. And then you kind of go down a rabbit hole and you find another one. So before my first dial day, I probably already listened to 30 or 40 trainings.
Mm-hmm.
And you can do all that. People say like they don't have time. It's like, man, I studied for the exam for 3 hours, and I had to go drive to pick up my kids or go to the grocery store. It's a 20-minute podcast. Just throw it on in the car. You don't have to take notes. Like, it's not a big deal. So plugging into the trainings. And then on top of that, though, those are all easy. You can do that on your own time. But you guys let me know the schedule for the virtual trainings we have live with the team. And it's like, hey, Thursdays at noon Eastern, there's a new agent call. You should probably get on it. Sunday afternoon, there's going to be a Q&A with top producers. Monday night, there might be a phone script or an in-home call. It's like you get a notification in Slack. Again, it's nice if you want to sit down and take notes, but what's the worst of just throwing it on in the background if you're doing something? So I started to absorb a lot of information that way. And then I also went through the new agent boot camp twice. Because I had such anxiety about not being able to make money. I was like, I'm going to do it once with notes, and then I'm going to go back through and review it. Not to say that I want you guys to start fast, but that's kind of like, I put in all the work because I didn't want to make any, I wanted to be prepared for my first dial day.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of that stuff you can do along the way after you dial the first time, too. You can keep watching trainings, keep implementing and stuff like that, right? Because as soon as you have a couple carriers, you should probably get in the field right away because the best way to learn is by doing, right? And that's one thing Trey Honeycutt, I mean, you remember he used to come into our office a lot in Denver, and he's said a lot of things that have impacted our business, but he was always like an hour in the field is worth 10 hours in the classroom, so you can make up for so much time spent, by studying stuff, by actually going out there and getting firsthand experience.
What I was going to say for me is I agree on the training. I did the exact same thing as you, just set my foundation up, just had like a core foundation set. But the biggest thing for me was getting in the game and then allowing myself to be course corrected. Yeah. So if you guys are anywhere near an office, that was 80% of my success came from getting in the office, being around Easton, being around Zach, because I would be 5 feet away from a top producer while they hear me stumble on the phones, and they can be like, hey, dude, remove that out of your phone script. But just like this, boom, now I'm booking the next appointment. Hey, just say this instead of that. Okay, perfect. Same thing out in the field, right? I would go out and Zach was like, hey, after every appointment you missed, like just give me a call me right afterwards so it's fresh on your mind and then we can go through it. And it was really funny. The first like 3 or 4 days, dude, I called Zach probably like 10 times and he's like, you didn't help him? Like, and then I'd be like, no, but this is what I said. And then he's like, okay, say this, right? And so by the time, my first month was over, I saw every scenario. I knew how to deal with every scenario. But, after I remember my first run day, I missed all 8 sales. And then my second run day, I helped about like 2 or 3 families. And it was all because I was reaching out to Zach and just getting course corrected each time so I didn't have to keep failing in the same scenario. So that would be my biggest piece of advice for somebody getting started in regards to training.
And then from a manager perspective, I remember too, maybe you don't even remember this, but I didn't always answer your questions either. Like I had a lot of videos when I was still in the field saved for each different scenario. So if it was internet lead, if it was a younger internet lead, older internet lead, a young mortgage protection, old mortgage protection, I would talk to you, listen to what you did wrong, quickly correct it, but not spend 30 minutes on the phone with you and be like, hey, why don't you listen to this? I remember distinctly one time you're like, I'm having trouble with this type of mortgage protection, from an age lead. And I'm like, here, why don't you watch this video of Steve G? This is what I think you did wrong, but listen to this video from Steve G. And then why don't you call me back and tell me what you think you did wrong? and like make people discover stuff for themselves a little bit. Cause you were like, oh, this is what I'm doing wrong now. It makes sense. I have no structure in my appointment, I think is what the issue was, right?
Yeah, it was. And I wasn't really good at getting into trainings like you were. So like, that's why Zach had to put me in that direction. But it's so great to like lean on people like you and Easton and everybody in this company. I think that's just like one of the biggest blessings we have here.
Yeah. And for anyone who's a manager watching too, it's like, how do you have time to do this with 500 agents, let's say, right? It's like, well, you teach other people how to do it. So you teach Wiley and Brian how to do it with their agents, but you also get really good at just pointing people towards the right resources. So you don't have to have all the conversations. It's important to have videos saved and things saved that you can leverage other people's time to, hey, this specific one, hey, I got an appointment in 7 minutes. Here's what I think you did wrong. Check this video out, watch it, call me back later, you know?
Yeah.
And half the time he wouldn't even call me back. He'd text me like, got it. I know I did wrong.
Yep.
What about for you, Brian, when you first got out in the field, what were some things you did to start learning, you know, what you were doing right or wrong in houses, or some tweaks you had to make to, you know, be able to help as many families as you did the first couple months?
I think the first thing, well, kind of started from you really, was the call me before, during, and after every appointment, especially your first months, but really your first 100. And then the first ones were like, we'll really walk you through it, and then it got weaned off into the training thing. But I think structure probably is the biggest one. Because if you just basically set the table, get their why out, and then tell them that you're going to submit an application for at least the bare minimum coverage today, and they agree right there, you know, most of the time you've already got at least one yes for a buying. That's a buying sign. So what really helped me in the beginning is listening to all those trainings and getting feedback, and then the structure of my in-home evolved to where I basically, if I show prices now, I don't even show prices if I don't think they're going to buy anymore.
Yeah. So when I was a new agent, a lot of people would say, a lot of the training people would say kind of vague things like ask more questions or paint the picture. And like saying those things almost kind of makes me cringe, because I remember being so frustrated. Like, dude, what does that actually mean though? Mm-hmm. So like, why don't you give everyone a good word track for how to open their appointments? Like, hey, if you copy this, this is how you should set up your appointment.
Got it. So this is how let's say I'm already in the house. We want to sit at a table. We're at the table. I pull out my license and credibility sheet, put it on the table, and I say, you know, here's my badge. It's me. Usually gets a cheap laugh. This is all the companies we represent. You know, John, usually when I meet with someone, it's for one or two of these three reasons. One, you don't have any coverage at all and you know you need it. Two, maybe you have a little. It's not enough or it's like expiring. And three, also generally everyone, you know, no one wants to be a burden on their family or loved ones. So I just want to get the why out straight out the gate. You know, they'll tell me their why. And then what really helped in the beginning is once they tell me, hey, my wife doesn't work, you know, I just want to make sure this house is taken care of. That's like great, but that's too surface level. Okay, what does it really look like for her? 'Cause she doesn't work. Okay, she has a disability. Okay, and then I basically want them to tell me why they need the insurance before I proceed. So I spend about 5 to 7 minutes there in every house. And then as soon as I feel like I have a strong why, I'll go, okay, there's 3 things we're going to do today. You know, 1, I got to ask you 2-3 minutes health questions. 2-3 minutes financial questions. You only qualify for what's in your budget. I stole that from Easton, and that's a great way to knock off, you know, these 80-year-olds who think they can get $1 million policy. You only qualify for what's in your budget. And then at the end of the day, you know, based on what you told me about your situation, your finances, and your health, I'm going to show you 2 or 3 options from the sheet, and then you're going to pick one, and we're going to submit, because at the end of the day, I don't have the final say, the carrier does, and then we'll go from there. Does that sound fair? And they say yes, and then I just go straight into asking about their money.
Yeah, and the way you set it up too, like you said, it's much easier to prevent objections and to overcome them at the end, right?
Yeah.
So if you set it up and you knock out all those things, like, and I think anyone watching, you should figure out what you get objections on and set it up that way. Like I think some of the in-homes that I've trained on, it's like, well, dude, I always I'll need to shop around. I want to think about it. And like, do we have to do this today? So I'd always put those in the beginning. Like, hey, I'm going to shop around for you. We're going to do this today. We're going to find what fits your budget and submit an application. Mm-hmm. But everyone's are different, right? Like, I'm trying to think of a common one. Like people will get like, hey, I need to talk to my kids about this, right? So if you get that, you should talk to the person and be like, hey, Brian, are you the person that makes all your own financial decisions, or do you need anyone here like a POA or anyone like that to make financial decisions for you? So just take that and just figure out where to implement it upstream so you don't get the objection at the end, right? And then if they bring it up, then I go, Brian, you told me you make all your own financial decisions, so it must be something other than that, right? Mm-hmm. Makes sense?
Huge, dude.
Yep.
I would say just early up front, like the biggest thing that allowed me to have success was I was really awful in the field getting going, and I had no structure. But the only thing that I had structure on was my dial days. I treated dial days like a holy day, right? Where I had all my leads organized and bought 2 or 3 days before. Everything was organized the night before. I would pencil out my schedule for the next day to make sure that I started dialing at 7:30. I would lock myself in the prison from 7:30 from 7:30 to 11, and then from 11 to 2, I'd either work out, grab lunch. I would just get some air, and then from 2 till 8 o'clock, I would dial. But those days, my girlfriend knew don't talk to me. I did not mess around with Zach in the office unless we were at lunch. I'd ask him questions. I didn't book any doctor's appointments. If you have a dog, dude, tell your neighbor, hey, take my dog. No excuses on those days, because I knew that if I had 15 people to go see the next day, that there was a really, really high chance I was going to go help between 3 to 5 families, which was going to allow me to feed my family. And then just running that many of appointments, the momentum carries and you just continue to get better and better. So that's the biggest thing for me, was making sure that my dial day was scheduled, planned, and treated as a holy day. Don't mess with me today.
Right, and that's how we train agents too. Is we'd have people, we'd be dialing, right? Hey, I want to talk to you about whatever, and I'd still be dialing. And if I picked up the phone, I'm all right, shh. I'm doing the phone script now, and I'm setting appointments. There's no interrupting dial day. And the example people always use is you have to keep your oxygen on first. But if you're the manager and you're bringing people on, you have to set the right example. Right, and a lot of times people are like, well, how do I help my agents sell more? It's dude, you should sell more. It's how do I help my agents book more appointments? Why don't you run 30 appointments a week? And then they'll do the same thing. You're asking people to do something you're not willing to do, which is why they're not doing it, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's why the people you're working with now do the same thing you do, is because you do it. You're not asking them. You're not saying, hey, go run a travel trip. You're like, hey, I ran a travel trip. You're not saying go sell virtually. I can tell you how to do virtual sales too. Exactly. I can show you what it looks like to have a productive dial day. So if you're wondering why your agency's not doing what you want it to do, maybe you need to look in the mirror and go, maybe it's me, right?
Yeah. One of the things that I love is just a quote, either you, Andrew Taylor, or Sean said, that if you are helping 40 families a month, then you can expect your agents to help 20. So just about half. So if you book 20 appointments, expect your agents to only book 10 that week, right? So if you want them to help 30 families, go out and help 60, right? Simple math.
Simple math.
Simple math.
So, and then Brian, I think the other misnomer people have too is everyone has a special type of lead, right? Or they're like, oh, this agent. I heard someone the other day tell me, I heard your agency only runs mortgage protection leads, which I thought was funny, right?
They said that?
Yeah, someone's like, I heard that you guys are doing good because you guys only run mortgage protection mailers. And I'm like, that's hilarious. We live in Colorado, right? Yeah. Where there's, I don't know, maybe Casey can look this up, but there's 5 million people in the whole state, right? Yeah. I'm pretty sure Cook County, Illinois is bigger. So, so it's not true, right? And so you got started and helped 30, 40 families a month, all off of CRM leads, basically, right? So I guess what tips do you have for agents to work through those leads efficiently? Because here's what people need to understand about leads, right? If you pay more for a lead, you have to get less of them to book the same amount of appointments. If you buy less, you're going to have to dial more to get the same amount of appointments, right? But the money you spend should be about the same. 15 appointments for you should be, everyone's different. But if you get 15 appointments, you should spend the same amount on mortgage leads and internet leads and 10-year-old mortgage leads. Right. You just have to get a lot more of them.
Yeah, so getting started, you just need more shots. And I still love an internet lead. I would say 80% of my business comes off of internet leads, and I've been doing this a year. And you can get a lot of them for the same 10 mortgage mailers is the same price as 200 internet leads, And if 6 people hang up on you and you only book 1 and they're not home, you're basically out. Whereas I got, 190 more people to call. So having a large volume, but also the expectations going into that, which were set for me, is like Wiley was talking about. You need to be here at 7:30. You're probably going to be on the phone from 7:30 to 2. Maybe you take a break and then you're back on the phone 3 to basically 9, or until you get your appointment count in. So with the internet leads, yeah, they can be a little bit more difficult to book, or people are going to say they didn't fill it out or anything. But when you do book them, there's no marketing term, which I really enjoyed. Oh, we thought this was Medicare. We thought it was free, or I thought this was going to cover the structure of the house. No. It's life, but if it's an internet lead, there's no BS about it being life insurance, which I really enjoyed. Also, there's some straight gold in there of people that basically know they need it before you got there, and they know it's life insurance, and they already basically have their checkbook out. I helped one who, I think it was like my 4th week. He was like, hey, I know this is going to be about $300 a month. Like, that's how he started the appointment. I was like, Zach, what do I do? I was like, don't mess it up.
Remain calm.
Yeah,
right?
remain calm. But with dialing the leads, for the phone burner, for the internet leads, it's $150 a month. There's plenty of resources on it. But that really helped getting out of my own way. I was an emotional wreck my first the first week of dialing. And then once I got phone burner, it just dials for you. So you can't even think about hitting next, which really helped. And it's also a great way to organize them. And you can call like twice as many people in the same amount of time. So I liked that about the CRM leads. And then just knowing the workflow. If I bought 200 of these, I should be able to book anywhere from 15 to 30% of them. Bad day, 15, good day, 30%. Let's just call it right in the middle. So you book, 20 appointments out of that. That's 10 each day. You could help easily 10 families a week doing that.
Yeah. The other thing too is like you actually did it yourself. So people sometimes are like, well, I want to outsource dialing, which I think is fine, right? Because to be totally transparent, you have a dialer now that helps you dial. So, but you didn't from day one.
Oh no.
And can you talk about what you did to actually? Because I think sometimes people hire someone to dial the phone for them, and then are like, all right, go dial. People do it with recruiter. People do it with every staff position. They're like, all right, you are in charge of this now, and they don't train them at all. So if someone is like, I need to train a dialer, like first they obviously have to be good at dialing so they can teach it, right? Same thing with recruiting. Like in order to have a recruiter, you have to understand how to recruit so you can train your recruiter how to do it efficiently, right? Yeah. So for a dialer, you got good at dialing. How did you train them to make sure that they were actually going to be a good dialer and make sure that they were setting appointments that would actually be beneficial for you rather than just having a bad experience, which a lot of people have had, I think.
Well, I had a bad experience too, and that one, I fired her. But I think if you can't go book 30 or 40 appointments yourself in a dial day, you can't have a dialer. Also, if you think you're going to spend less money on leads and have the same or better results, you can't have a dialer. And also, if you don't want to dial it all yourself, I don't think you should have a dialer either. I still dial. I dial a lot of my new leads myself, but I'll still get on and crank the internet leads as well. And what I got with her is I only want basically lay down appointments and just having her book really, really solid. Like they're going to give me an hour-long window. They confirmed 3 or 4 things. They confirmed it was for life insurance. Like I'd rather have 3 of those than 7. Hey, I might be home at this time. Okay, I'll stop by. Which allowed me to be a lot more intentional with my time. But it helps a lot. I still dial myself, so I'll book, 3 or 4, 6, 7 of those myself for one day, and she'll book 3 or 4 of them, and that's how I have 10 appointments a day. So I'm still booking 20 appointments a week myself, and she's booking the other 20, just to kind of really free me up to help build my agency. But I would get on the phone with her for about a month. I would dial together, just like you dial with your agents. I got on Zoom with her and gave her live feedback. Phone burner allows you to record the conversations. So if I had a maybe not so good appointment or whatever, I can listen to the recording. Like people think they're just going to get a dialer and go and everything's taken care of. It's like, no, you have an employee. Like you have to manage them. We have meetings. I talk to her 2-3 times a week. If we have a bad week, we schedule like a longer one. Like I still get her, top producer lead flow on top of my own personal leads as well. So it's not just here's 100, $1 leads, get me 20 appointments, because that's never going to work.
Right. Yeah. You treat it the same. You get the same lead flow that you would need, and probably a little bit more in order to have the same thing happen.
Yeah.
And I think it's smart. And I never had a dialer, but I would do the same thing. And why not give all of your old internet leads to someone else to dial? If you can help one extra family from that pays for the dialer, right? If you can help a couple extra, then you're profiting and running a business the right way. So, Wiley, do you have any other questions for Brian before we wrap this up?
I just have one last thing I'd want to touch on is, if I was a new agent getting started, I know everybody talks about the mortgage leads, and you just had that question asked to you. Like I heard you guys sell a lot because you have mortgage leads.
Yeah.
If I was new, I would want the oldest leads, because that's how you became really good. You worked all old mortgage leads, but that's how you start creating your skill set, right? So for example, I had a new agent come in today. We did a lead plan yesterday, so I'm going to sort of walk everyone through it because I think a lot of people are in the same boat as him. He had $300 to spend. So we got about 200 3-month-old internet leads or whatever it is. I told them, here's your expectation. You're going to be in the office for 12 to 14 hours tomorrow. Okay. Out of the 200 leads, you're probably only going to book 10 to 15. You're not going to book 40 guys. You're going to book 10 to 15 appointments. And you need to sit, call each one 3 times for 12 hours till your day is done. We're going to take 1 lunch break, and that is it.
Yep.
Got it? I say, if you sell 3 appointments, you're going to be profiting very, very well. After that, you take that money that you've earned, and then now you're able to spend money on, quote unquote, better leads. You know, they're not as old. So that's what I would suggest for somebody new. It's okay to buy old leads, and you want to go through the reps because you're nervous, you have anxiety, you don't know what to say with the objections. So this is what truly trains you. This is how you get better. This is how you just get comfortable in that uncomfortableness. And then once you make a couple sales, then you're actually going to be able to consistently have a nice lead flow. So that's what I'd want to end with. And then just focus on running your 100 appointments, focus on dial days, and just, don't drop your ego and reach out to the top producers. If you need anything from us, Brian, what would be like the best way to get a hold of you?
Or just call or text me 801-674-2424.
Cool. And then my number is 970-948-6022. You guys can follow me on Instagram. It's Hawkins Wiley. That's probably the best, area to get a hold of me. Zach, anything else, man?
Same thing. Anyone is able to reach out to me too. My cell phone, 970-210-2624. And same thing, my name on Instagram, Zach Twardowski. So reach out. We're happy. We're here to help. And if anyone wants to have a conversation too, and they're looking at doing this, and they're like, I want to have a conversation, but I don't want to be recruited. I'm not going to try to recruit someone who doesn't want to do this. I'm happy to give anyone information. I know you guys are as well. So
yeah. Well, thanks for
if you think it'll be a good fit,